LaxFactor podcast. What is up, lacrosse fans? You're watching the 118th episode of the LaxFactor podcast. Today, we're going to talk about some transfer news. We're going to talk about the PLL reversible pennies that came out that angered some people. And I have a couple of news items from Inside Lacrosse articles and Lacrosse Bucket articles that I wanted to talk about as well. So we'll get into talking about Princeton post Michael Sowers. We're going to talk about, is Penn State still the team to beat in the Big? There's a bunch of stuff we're going to go through. Before I get into it, as always, be sure to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you're notified when we put out videos. If you'd like to support the channel, you could go to laxfactor.com, get yourself some swag, hats, t-shirts, coffee mugs, whatever. And if you like to listen only, you can go to anchor.fm/LaxFactor or anywhere else that you get your podcast, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google, you name it. So let's get into it. First thing I wanted to talk about today, the PLL Pinnies, the dye sublimated reversible pennies that were highly anticipated. People were really excited about them. They dropped this week, and it angered a boatload of people. At one point, I was scanning the PLL's Facebook post comments section because pretty much the comments are the best part of any social media post. And I went in and looked at the comments, and it was just, they were being universally panned for their pricing strategy. They came out with an $80 price tag. I think most fans are used to paying somewhere in the area of, let's say, $20 to $50 for one of those custom dye sublimated reversible pennies if they were to purchase it for their kid, let's say, in his summer league team, or even for his team's just regular practice reversible. So $20 would be a really good price for a team order for just the reversible, especially dye sublimated. And, probably the industry standard is somewhere between $30 to $50, depending on who you're getting it from. So for these to come out with an $80 price tag, I understood why people would be upset. And I was more just kind of like, whoa, $80. Now I get it. If you compare them to other pro leagues, selling a jersey of this sort, and this is probably a much higher quality jersey, let's say like a kind of tank top, than you're going to get if you're to buy an NBA jersey, let's say, because it's reversible. It's dye sublimated. I mean, you're going to be able to wear two different sides. It's well designed. All aspects of this scream quality. It's made by Adidas. So they are high quality garments, I would presume. The kicker is the lacrosse community has never been one to get gouged. We get gouged by equipment manufacturers, that's for sure, but we haven't been gouged by teams too badly because there hasn't been huge opportunities within the pro sports arena. We haven't had this huge opportunity to get gouged for merchandise yet. And I know a lot of people that bought a lot of the early first run PLL gear had problems. They said they didn't fit. I guess some of the hats were totally crap. And there was some issues with some of the first runs, and a lot of people say, hey, we've already kind of overpaid willingly for some gear that we're not necessarily pleased with, and now these reversible pennies come out, and they are priced $80. So, I don't know. I get it. They're trying to make a buck. They're trying to make a buck, intelligently, work smarter, not harder. So pricing these at a point with which you think, okay, people are going to grumble. Like probably the name of the game is we need to price these at an area where people are going to grumble, but enough people are going to buy them that we're going to make that cheddar, and we won't have to process as many orders to make the same amount of cheddar. I think a price point that they could have put these at that would not have angered people would have been $50, and I think people would have been like, giddy up, baby. A bunch of people would have bought two of them. I think $60 would have still been pretty reasonable. I think even getting into 65, it's that extra 15, jumping that right up to $80 that I think is stinging people a little bit. But they're a business. You got to do what you got to do, and maybe they'll adjust it. Maybe the next ones that come out won't be quite that high. Maybe they'll end up coming out with two versions, one not reversible, maybe, where you still get the quality of that one design, but it's not reversible, so the price point might be a little bit more appetizing. They'll figure it out. I think this was a little bit of a miss, though. I think a lot of the comments were saying, who the hell is doing your marketing testing? Who are you interviewing and who are you talking to come up with this price? Because a lot of fans were really upset, and that's something you don't want to see when social media is your jam and you're the league that does it better. than everybody else, the one thing you don't want to see is every comment panning you for the decision that you made or for whatever promotion you're running. And that was the case. There was, let's say, for every 10 negative comments, and I mean, they were pretty negative, there may have been one or two people saying, hey, I'll still get one. They're a business. Stop your whining. And like I said before, the lacrosse community is extremely sensitive and a little bit pansy-ish. So the whining, I wasn't surprised about, and I actually understood it for once, where I don't always understand what the lacrosse community is whining about. I understood it totally. I was with them, but I also understand it as a business owner myself. I understand it from the PLL's perspective in terms of we gotta make a buck. We have to make a buck in a way that doesn't require we ship 1,000 of these to turn a profit. You know, if we only ship 500 at the $80 price point, they're going to make as much as if they shipped 1,000 of them at the $50 price point. I think that my biggest gripe, if I were involved in this decision-making process, becomes it's early. These things were hotly anticipated, and I feel like one of the big things they could have done, especially as a league growing, is lower the price point, get more people wearing these things because they were sweet. The designs on them were incredible. Get as many people out there wearing them as you possibly can, and that's a good marketing move. You may not make as much off the sale of the items, or maybe you do end up making as much. You just do a little bit more work to turn the same profit, in the sense of if the lower the price point, the more you have to sell to make a profit. So that would have maybe been a little bit less, or maybe about the same, just with more work. But I think the marketing benefit, the benefit of getting those jerseys out and getting them on the people, probably would have outweighed that issue. I think another issue with maybe pricing them that way initially was that they do that this year. You're going to expect it next year. So at some point they were going to end up jacking these up. So I get it. If I was the owner of a pro franchise, that is exactly the price point I would want them to be at. But it was very evident that they missed it with the fans, and the fans overall were fairly upset. Now, I say that I always complain about people trying to gauge an entire community's feelings based off social media reaction, which is terrible because social media is primarily driven by narcissist, whiny little crybabies. But in this case, seemed pretty legit. People were pretty upset. Man, I rambled about that for a long time. Let's get on to our other news here. Transfer news. Virginia attackman Payton Cormier enters the NCAA transfer portal. This was an article in Inside Lacrosse that I had come across. Tiffany's hoping he stays. I know everyone at Virginia is hoping he stays. He's a talent. And when he came out of high school, 26th overall recruit in his class, number 6 attackman. But I know that the Virginia fans, via like the fan lax boards and everything, were really high on this kid. They thought he was going to be able to find a way to contribute and to do so young. Spent his freshman year injured. But he was having and that was in 2019, he sat out with an injury. But in 2020, he was having a nice season leading up to the COVID canceling everything, the Rona ruining our fun. He had 3 goals in his first collegiate game. That's pretty awesome. 5 points, 4 goals, and 1 assist versus High Point in Virginia's close win over High Point. He was number 18 in the nation in terms of shooting percentage. He had a 50% shooting percentage. That's pretty good. So the kid was playing ball, and like I said, it's not for sure that he's leaving Virginia at this stage. Tiffany's still hoping he stays, but it's being reported that he's entered the portal and he's at least shopping around here. Another notable that I didn't actually know was in the transfer portal was Jonathan Donville out of Cornell. 35 points as a freshman, 34 points as a sophomore in the COVID shortened season. Was that the COVID shortened season? Did he have 34 points in their first few games of COVID? I can't imagine that he did. So yeah, I think last year was his junior season. So as a freshman, 34, 35 as a sophomore, 34, and I don't know what he was up to so far in 2020. But Donville, if he does end up leaving Cornell, it's not for sure that he's leaving either. If he does end up leaving Cornell, that will sting for them. Luckily, they kept Teat, and maybe the fact that Teat is still rocking the party, that rocks the party, maybe Donville will also stay. But that was interesting news, notable news. There's a bunch of other guys that are still out there, but none as big as those 2 guys, I don't think, not at least for what they mean to their teams. A new thing that we're going to try to do, or I'm going to try to do, is just kind of find articles that I dig and then push that writer, push that publication and then just talk about it. It's an easy way to come up with some topics for the podcast. Thanks, Bryce Queener, PY homie, who now has his own podcast, and he's been putting that up on YouTube. I had encouraged him to do so when he first started putting stuff up on Facebook. I noticed he was just kind of doing a roll of the news, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to steal that. I haven't done it to this point where I just talk about a boatload of things and just ramble on incessantly, but I think the goal here is to get more into live streaming and doing a lot more of that, and then using the real organized videos more for team reviews and things like that. So the news stuff we're going to try to get into, we'll probably get to the point where we live stream that, put it out, do it in an evening, and we'll be done. But anyway, Lacrosse Bucket, first article, and you can go to lacrossebucket.com to read this if you'd like to, and I'll put a link in the description. Probably I won't. I always say I'll put a link in the description. I usually don't. So go to lacrossebucket.com and you can see what Tanner's up to. But what he was talking about in this article, what will a post-Sowers Princeton look like? And rough. I mean, if you ask me, I think a post-Sowers Princeton is going to look rough because it's not just Sowers that they lost. They lose so far in 2020 before COVID wrecked us. Sowers was already up to 16 goals, 31 assists, and 47 points. And then they don't just lose him, though. They also lose Philip Robertson to Duke. Also, he went to Duke with Sowers. He had 13 goals, no helpers. He was a perfect off-ball complement to a guy like Mike Sowers. So they lose that. And then the other problem ends up being teams like Cornell, let's say. They retained a couple of their guys, so they're keeping, let's say, Jeff Teat. So whereas Princeton lost their best player, Yale lost their best player, and some of these other Ivy League schools have also, Penn, I know, has lost a couple of their best players. Penn lost a few guys, actually, as did Yale. The Yale lost a midfielder too, Kotler, I think. And the problem is going to end up being for Princeton, like with some of these other teams, is that a team like Cornell, they didn't lose their guy. Jeff Teat is getting to stay. He's getting to play that fifth year at Cornell, and Princeton doesn't have that. So not only did Princeton lose their best, a couple of their top guys, but they're also going to have to face the fact that some of the other teams in the Ivy didn't, most notably Cornell. Had to get a drink, sorry. So I think it's going to hurt. I think a post-Sowers Princeton looks pretty rough come next year. They're going to be competitive. I'm not saying they're going to drop off the face of the planet Earth, but back down, they were looking like they were going to maybe win 8 to 10 games in 2020 and then make the playoffs and see if they can make a run with their Tewaaraton, their Tewaaraton winner, because Sowers would have won the Tewaaraton. But without him and without Robertson and then with some of the other teams retaining guys that they couldn't, that is going to sting. And I think that it's going to make Princeton, probably finish somewhere around 500, maybe even below 500. It's going to take a year or two because they just weren't planning on not having Mike Sowers yet. And that is the deal now. Another Lacrosse Bucket article. Again, go to lacrossebucket.com and then just start comment spamming Tanner, letting him know that you came from here. Let's leave an imprint here on the poor guy. Penn State, are they still the team to beat in the Big? And I believe Tanner's, he thinks that they are, and he thinks that that's fair because they were the team to beat last year. They should be the team to beat this year. I don't totally disagree that they're the team to beat based on that logic that you always kind of have to go by where you finished the end of the season before to a degree. The problem with is Penn State the team to beat in the Big now is that Penn State lost a 100+ point player. Ament gone, running around all over in the PLL, doing awesome, and Penn State does not have his services anymore. And he was a huge part of that offense. If you watched Penn State play, Grant Ament was carrying the ball all the time, feeding all sorts of people, all willy-nilly, all over the field, and the attention that he garnered between him and Mac O'Keefe playing so well together ended up freeing up some other guys. So it's going to be hard for Penn State, I think, to replace that production. They're not going to be able to replace that production. They just have to totally figure it out again and now figure out a new offensive scheme and what is that going to look like. I mean, Folds, I like what he's going to be able to do here. He's going to be able to get the ball a little bit more, and I like him as a dodger. I like him as a 50-50 threat, but what's that do to O'Keefe's production, not having a guy like Ament? I think I said it in my 2020 preview before the 2020 season started that actually Ament and O'Keefe didn't hook up quite as much as you would have thought, considering the number of assists that Ament had. Ament really did spread it out quite a bit, and O'Keefe was able to leech off of a bunch of different players. But once again, like I said, now not as many eyeballs are paying attention to Ament, so they're going to start paying attention to other guys. O'Keefe, definitely one of them. Folds will be another. But you can't front on them still. They have a lot of talented players, and they've got a lot of recruits coming in, and they've got a lot of guys waiting to get their chance to play. So maybe Penn State can find their next Grant Ament and replace some of that production. Maybe it just some of the guys like Folds have to step up a little bit more and carry the ball a little bit more and create, but we'll see. But it's definitely puts them in a position where the moral of the story is, to me, Maryland is technically the team to beat in the Big. I think Maryland is the team to beat in the Big every season until they totally get toppled. One season that, let's say, they don't win the regular season and the tournament, does not undo all of the crap that they've done over the last 10 years, especially the Tillman era. So I think that Maryland's the team to beat to me. I think that Penn State was the team to beat in 2020, and I think Penn State they needed to win it all in 2020, but you lose a player. I'm not going to say he's a generational player, but he's certainly a generational talent at Penn State. Ament is, and I think he's probably going to prove himself to be a generational player beyond that. It's funny that I'm talking generational players after last episode where I was bashing using that term. So I think that to pretend that doesn't bump them below Maryland overall in terms of expectations, at least from the real lacrosse people, I think would be naive and not being totally honest. I think Maryland is the team to beat in the Big. All right, I rambled a lot. That's it. I'm going to stop here now. So as always, be sure to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, go to LaxFactor.com, get swag, support us, do whatever. And if you want to listen, anchor.fm/LaxFactor or anywhere else that you can get podcasts. So that is it. We will be back next week. We're slowly but surely getting to the point where we're going to start live streaming one episode per week, and we're going to record and put out another episode. I don't know at what point I'm going to be ready to do it. I was hoping to live stream Tuesday night and then put this out Thursday morning, but didn't happen. So we're trying to get to that point where we're going to get up to 2 shows per week, one of them live streamed, one of them recorded. And I'll let you know. As soon as we do get to that point, we'll just start throwing crap up, seeing what sticks. But that's it. Next week, I think we're going to talk about Rutgers. We're going to talk about we're going to do kind of a more formal team preview for Rutgers. We will do talk a bunch of other news and things like that. And maybe we'll talk about the new girls league, what I did and didn't like about that new league that's forming, how it's going to work. So actually, we'll talk a little bit about girls lacrosse in the next episode, which will be, I think, a first here, because I never talk about girls lacrosse because I don't watch it. And I'm only marginally, maybe this sorry about that. So that's it. Thank you for watching. Hoost is out.